Good afternoon to everybody. So another day has gone by, so it's an opportunity to ask any questions, clarify any doubts that any of you might have. So once again, please don't be shy. You're very welcome to ask anything that would be, say, in relationship, particularly to the practice as we've been describing it.
Good afternoon, Ajahn. I've heard Ajahn speak about your experience with cancer. So I'm living with something very similar, and I find that it occupies my mind a lot. So I guess my question is, I often have this feeling when I'm sort of calm, or not really calm, but quiet, that there's this underlying anxiety. And if I look at it, I feel like it's also this desire to control the illness, even though intellectually I know that it's just a thought and it's Dhamma. But there is this overwhelming desire to control it, and also a fear of it worsening. So I was wondering if Ajahn could speak maybe to a Buddhist perspective on surrendering. Maybe it's not the right word from a Buddhist perspective, but something along those lines, which is something I struggle with a lot. Sometimes I find that the negativity or the negative thoughts are very overwhelming. And I would appreciate any advice Ajahn has. Thank you.
Yes, well, the good question. I mentioned that I studied physiology in university, and one of the things I was left with at the end of 3 years of when I had come to the end of the degree was that I was amazed that our bodies work at all. They're so complicated. There's like billions of chemical reactions that happen every hour, every minute. How it all works at all is amazing. So one of the things, I didn't have any experience of Buddhist teachings really before I came into the monastery, but one thing I could relate to is the teachings on I am of the nature to age, I am of the nature to sick, and I am of the nature to die. It's like, yes, but this is no surprise. There'll never be an occasion when every human being on the planet is perfectly healthy. Like I was saying to Yom Nong's question yesterday, people won't find they're out of a job if they're a doctor because no one's getting ill. So even though illness, something serious like cancer, is it's life-threatening, the context that we give it is important. So if the context is, I have the right and expectation to be completely healthy and comfortable throughout the entirety of my life, and any illness is something going wrong and is bad and shouldn't be there, then we've set ourselves up for a lot of anxiety and dukkha. So the Buddha's approach is kind of in the opposite direction. So we haven't done it on this retreat yet, but one of the teachings that the Buddha specifically encourages both the lay people and the monastic community to recollect every day 5 subjects for frequent recollection, and is I am of the nature to age, jara dhammomi jarang anatito. I am of the nature to sicken, bayadi dhammomi bayading anatito. I am of the nature to die, marana dhammomi maranang anatito. So that could seem like a very depressing teaching. Why does the Buddha want us to make us think of that? Well, what he's trying to do is to help us be realistic and say, this is the deal. Maybe we didn't read the small print, but this is the deal. This is born into the human realm as a physical body. It gets older, and then one day it stops integrating and it disintegrates. That the life of that body comes to an end. That's nature. It's not personal. So even though it can seem a bit challenging to our ego, threatening, in the same gesture, it's also liberating to the citta, because when we realize, oh, of course, how could I be the one human being on the planet who's got the right to never get ill, the expectation to never be ill. How could that be? Oh, and that is changing from a self-centered view to a nature-centered view, or Dhamma-centered view, you can say. So those teachings are a bit blunt. Aging, sickness, death, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I'm the owner of my karma and heir to my karma, and so on. So those are challenging to the ego, but liberating to the citta. Because when they're recognized, you consciously bring your attention to that. Then, mysteriously, by acknowledging that, yes, that's the case on the physical level, but also rupang anatta, the body is not self. In a different section of the chanting. So it's because of identification with the body, a Sakaya Ditti, self-view, I am the body, I'm the personality, then it feels like there's a terrible loss. So many years ago, when I got the diagnosis of melanoma, I had a mole on my chest that was getting larger and getting strangely shaped and was itching. And when I was encouraged to go and visit. I'm very casual about my health generally, but when I went to we started the new monastery in California. It's very hot there, like here. And so we're just wearing a one-shoulder angsa. Then one of the novices and one of the lay people saw that I had this mole on my shoulder, and they said, "You should get that looked at." So I went to the dermatologist in the local town, and that part of America, they used a lot of very kind of weird and wonderful, colorful characters. Mendocino County, Northern California, is the kind of woo-woo territory. Major marijuana growers and alternative cult religions in the hills and so on. So I walked into the doctor's office. I could see the kind of, oh no, another one. Look on his face. Okay, what is it? But he took one look at my mole, and without pausing, he picked up a camera, took a picture, put the camera down, picked up a syringe, and said, "Lie down." And so I thought, well, that was very quick. That was a very, very brief examination. He took one look and said, "Okay, that needs to go." So then it was a week between I had the first surgery and they sent the mole off to the laboratory in Stanford University Medical Center. So that was a very interesting week, because just the year before, one of our students had also been diagnosed with melanoma and had been told she was going to be dead by Christmas. It didn't turn out that way. She'd been misdiagnosed, but I had spent a lot of time counseling her and learning a lot about melanoma the previous year. And she was a nurse at San Francisco General Hospital, so she was very well informed. So I was kind of melanoma cognizant, knowledgeable. And so I didn't know whether this was not melanoma at all, or it was stage 4 and I'll be dead by Christmas. So that was a very interesting week, because we just opened the new monastery. That was like 4 months after we opened the monastery, even before Luang Por Prasanna had arrived. So I was going to say, well, I'm off. It's all yours. Didn't have to do that, but it was a very interesting week, because the kind of feelings that you're describing were very front center. Like, this is I'm only just 40. We've got this new place, and this wasn't what I was expecting. And well, I'm a Buddhist monk. I should be ready for this. And a whole kind of flurry of mixed feelings, but a lot of anxiety and agitation in the mixture. So it was a very good opportunity to look at that. And then I realized that all of the anxiety, the kind of negative feelings, they were all based on my plans. What I had assumed, I've just opened a new monastery. I'm going to be establishing a community here in California, first monastery of Luang Por Chah's tradition in America. Or maybe I'm not. So really I could see very clearly that all of the agitation and anxiety was coming from me and my plans, my expectations, my assumptions. When I put those aside and I said, well, here's a body, it's been born, anything can happen. And I recollected all those physiology lectures and the kind of extraordinary intricacy of the body chemistry and mechanics. And I thought, well, okay, if this is how it ends, this is how it ends. Okay, it's up to Ajahn Pasanno. Okay, so it can be his baby instead of us sharing it together. So that's the challenge, really, is to look to be in a way to tease apart the feelings based on self-view and that self-centered expectations, and then the perspective based on Dhamma, based on nature, and looking at your life, your body, your mind, in terms of the natural order. We're surrounded here by the forest, by the trees and the plants, and the way of nature is very visible all around us in a place like Chaisai. But if we look at the natural world and we really contemplate it, as Luang Por Chah would encourage us to do, look how nature works. Then we translate that into our own life, and then it's kind of sobering. The word sobering. It's like, wow, I had a lot of really stupid expectations. Why would I think that when you see how nature works and how very few things that are born actually make it to fulfillment, to adulthood, and so on. So in a way, it's an application of wise reflection. And then it's just there in that chant, maybe we'll do it this evening, the 5 subjects of frequent recollection, to really let that sink in. And then not to be, if there are then the waves of worried feeling that, but this is my life, to not push those away, but not to grasp hold, but say, oh, this is the anxious, agitated reactions that come from Sakkaya Ditthi. That's what this is. Because of self-view, this is the cause, then this is the effect. Here's the cause, here's the effect. And then why we contemplate karma and vipaka, its result, as a basis for upekkha, I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, is because when we see how things work according to natural law, then that brings an evenness, a serenity to the citta. Do you have anything to add to that? Please go ahead. Please, if you got some interesting illnesses yourself. You have some interesting illnesses yourself.
We all have.
We all have.
I think that as Buddhists, we learn to see this nature of the body in a different perspective. Instead of seeing it a kind of only bad thing that come into our life, sometimes we can see it as a kind of blessing, offering us opportunity for us to see something or develop our understanding about the Dhamma. When I listen to your story, it reminds me of one of the inspiration that I got from Luang Por Plian, who also got cancer. I visited him on his deathbed. It was something like maybe a week before he died. When I bowed to him, the person sit just next to me is the doctor, the head doctor of the university nearby, come to just look after Luang Por. And he said to one of his colleagues that Luang Por got the maximum of morphine to deal with his pain, but he still couldn't cope with the pain in his body. But by the look of it, you see that I don't know how he can cope with it. The level of pain that even morphine cannot deal with it to the maximum. But then you don't see any signs of suffering from that body. He just lie down there and then very peaceful and serene. So I got a lot of inspiration for that. when I bow to him, that the words just come up to me automatically, that Supatipanno Sāvaka Saṅkho. So I hope that one day in my life, I can even do just a tiny like him. That would be my goal, you see. So this is my point, is that when we got this, we learn to practice metta toward ourselves, to observe, to always observe that sometimes we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves by allow anxiety to govern our mind, instead of seeing just as something that comes and goes. It's natural for all of us, I think that including me too, if you have to deal with some serious illness, a lot of negative thoughts probably come. But it's our duty to practice metta toward ourselves, not allow it to stay, and then keep proliferating on that, just aware of it, and then let it go. So this is one of the duty. And I see this as a kind of opportunity for us to, in the same way that even death, you see, people see that as a kind of something that we don't like, but then looking from the Buddhist perspective, that really come to show us how valuable of our time here. So our life is short. So one day we're going to be parted from this world, be parted from everything that we love. So how we can spend our time well. So we can use it in this way, finding the positive perspective from what we have. So this is just that I to share.
Thank you, Tanajan. I have two, I think, short questions or clarifications. One would be regarding bhava in the 12 links. If you could clarify that a little bit, or from what I gathered yesterday, is that following craving and clinging, it then induces action or activity. Is that the meaning? Is kamma basically the meaning of bhava in this context, or is there more to it than that? That would be the first question.
Yeah, this comes up. The way the Buddha phrases his teachings is not entirely systematic or completely logical, and sometimes the same words are used for, say, in like just independent origination. You've got sankhara as the second element of the whole 12. You've got it as part of the 5 khandhas as well in the nama rupa, in part of nama. So with bhava, you've got bhava as there as one of the 3 kinds of desire, bhava tanha. Then you got bhava, it's got its own department later on down the track. So it's good to contemplate these things. In a way, the bhava has that link between clinging and birth, as I was describing last night. It's the moment of maximum absorption. So you've become that project. You've become that angry outburst. You've become that excited person on the dance floor. You're completely, carried away into that. So it's the commitment to that and sort of entering in. So it's becoming rather than become. So that it's an active verb. So jati is where you have become, and so it's there's a quality of movement, or the sort of the thrill of expectation that's part of bhava. Like I was describing that experiment with the galvanic skin responders. It's maximum bhava is when you know you're going to get the product and you haven't quite got it yet. Yes, yeah, and I feel the English word becoming is very appropriate in that, and so it's in a way that's what we say we lock onto. So it's involved with action, but it can also be just happening on the internal level, the attitude of mind. So if you think of a change in attitude as something that you are doing, it's an act it's not to do with movement or speech, but it's a mental act. Then I would say, yeah, it's to do with action and the kind of the thrill of being engaged and the way the world compresses to a very, very narrow particular field of experience, like this. This is it. And so that we like that simplicity and that quality of focus. That's why people do adventure sports, kind of go skiing off, drop by a parachute onto the top of a mountain and skiing down vertical slopes, or hang gliding, or rock climbing, or putting yourself into extreme danger. Why people go to scary movies. It's like, what's going to happen next? So we even though we're frightened or it's literally life-threatening, we like that definition, and we can get addicted to that and find the next thing and the next thing to keep feeding that, because when there isn't that definition that comes from imminent death or a well-made scary film, then or whatever it might be, high-speed motorbike riding or something, then life can be feel really empty or worthless, and we don't like that. One of the former monks at Chittahurst and Amaravati was a New Zealander, and he got into hang gliding in the early days of hang gliders, when they were not very easy to control, and landing was very iffy, as we would say. And when somebody asked him, we were in California together before the monastery began, and somebody asked him, because he's a very extrovert, kind of very physical, very talented guy, and people said, "Why did you become a Buddhist monk?" He was like, "You could have done all kinds of things in the world." And he said, "Well, one day I was on a hang glider and I jumped off a cliff, and I got into a downward spiral, and each spiral of the hang glider brought me closer and closer to the cliff face, and I was completely out of control. And so there's the threat of crashing into the cliff face each time I swung around, and then I was going to land on the beach or on the rocks." And so he made it to a reasonably safe landing. He said, "After you go through that, it's very hard to go to work on Monday morning." So that life was he realized that he couldn't just keep getting more and more thrills, and that life was going to be increasingly barren and worthless unless he discovered what was going on inside him. He said, so that's how I ended up in the monastery, because of realizing that if that's the only way you feel alive, is that absorption into that bhava, then you're making your life extremely narrow and probably short. So that there's also, you might not be familiar with Winnie the Pooh and the Christopher Robin stories. So there's a very interesting passage. This was written in the 1920s, and Pooh is kind of addicted to honey. He's a bear and he loves his honey. And so one day his friend Piglet asks him, "What's the best thing in the world, Pooh?" And Pooh says, "Honey, of course." And then he says, then I feel this was very insightful of the author, because he said, then Pooh thought for a moment and said, "Actually, there's something better than honey. It's when you're just about to have some. You've got the honey jar and you're just about to have some. That's the best thing in the world." I thought, well, Mr. Milne had some insight. But when you've got the jar in your hand, the spoon is in there, it's going to happen, but it hasn't quite happened because, as I was mentioning last night, when you actually get the honey, something starts to deflate, and so we think, oh, another spoon, different brand of honey, and so on. So that, in terms of meditation practice and in terms of Paticcasamuppāda, just recognizing that what bhava brings us is defined being, this, and there's nothing else. And so we love that quality of defined being. And death, psychological death, is a lack of defined being. So it's also why when we've got through our list of things to do, we finish the chores around the house, we sit down and go, ah. And then after 2 or 3 seconds, should be worrying about something. There's something, I'm sure there's something I should be doing. And then we've said, oh yes, of course, I've got I was going to clean out the garage. You remember another thing you have to do and you feel relieved. Because who am I if I've got nothing to do? Just ordinary little everyday incidents like that. When you've finished your list of emails, or you've finished the washing up, after 3 or 4 seconds, the mind starts to hunt for another thing for me to be, to exist in relationship to. So what's your second question? I'm not good at short answers.
Maybe this will actually feed into one of the Dhamma talks, I suspect. I think I heard you say on the first evening that we will discuss the 12 links of dependent arising of dukkha and also the dependent arising of nibbana. And to me, this sounded like a contradiction. If nibbana is the uncreated, then would you elaborate on that, or is that a subject of a Dhamma talk?
I can try to be quick. Well, it's not really the arising of nibbana, but the arising of the conditions where nibbana is realized. So in a particular sutta, which is number 61 in the Book of the Tens, if you're interested, then I think, no, number 58, 58. Then it says it's a kind of alternative track for dealing with the experiential field. So it starts off, rooted in interest, chanda mula, rooted in interest are all things, born of attention are all things, arising from contact, sense contact, phassa, are all things, diverging into feelings are all things. So there's no avijja necessarily involved in the mixture, but the whole sensory process is happening. So there's interest, attention, contact, feeling. Diverging into feelings are all things. Then, headed by concentration, dominated by mindfulness, surmounted by wisdom are all things. So as a feeling, painful feeling, pleasant feeling, worried feeling, excited feeling. So that the feelings that headed by concentration, dominated by mindfulness, surmounted by wisdom, samadhi, sati, and panya. So then, if feelings are fully known and reflected upon with wisdom, then they yield deliverance as their essence. So it says, yielding deliverance as their essence are all things, merging with the deathless, the amato gada, the amata dhamma, the deathless dhamma, terminating in nibbana are all things. So every experience will lead the mind to the realization of nibbana if that experience is handled in a skillful way. Painful, pleasant, neutral. So it's not the arising of nibbana, but it's a sequential process of 10 links in that respect. But I will probably talk about that a bit more later on. Any other questions? Please, there's one at the back there. You can answer this. Okay. You want me?
นมัสการค่ะอาจารย์ I guess I have two set of questions. The first one is about my practice. As I sit, I find myself struggling to breathe. Almost like feels like the loss of breath, and suddenly I just couldn't find my breathing. So I was wondering if you have any tips for that. And my second question would be, we talked a lot about attachment and detachment. How would you balance between being ambitious and achieving your goals or your career goals with also applying non-attachment?
Okay. You can go. Breathing. Then she concentrates on her breathing, and then she finds it difficult to breathe. And the second one is, how do you
I tried the first one and the second for Ajahn. Well, I think it's natural, right? When normally in our life, in daily life, we just breathe normally. We don't find any problem of breathing. But once we start to meditate, it become not natural for some time. And also the same go with walking meditation. It doesn't seem to be natural at the beginning. I think it takes some time. This reminds me of when I was a lay person. I studied the faculty of mass communication. I enjoy watching movie before I study. So I watch movie. I was moved by the movie. I laugh and cry. But the first year that I study about film, and then we have a group of discussion on how the film was made, how the actor will act. I don't enjoy watching movie. Because every time I watch movie, I see that they use this angle to tell this story, or they use the technique of foreshadowing, or this is a style of acting using this way and that way. See? So you analyze it during that time. It's not fun at all. But for some time, it come together, and this time I can enjoy. And if I want to know, I also know it too. And I can choose that this time I'm not going to analyze it. I just enjoyed it, watching it. And this time I analyze it. Or I can take it later to know how the story will tell according to the technique in term using the camera, and also how the technique as the very good actor like Daniel Day-Lewis can play. So I can understand that too, but then I can enjoy and appreciate. So I think that it takes some time for us as a practitioner. Be patient with it. This is the key. And then after some time, you learn to breathe normally, and then have these kinds of awareness with it too. So this is what.
I don't know if it's any comfort to you, but Luang Por Chah had exactly the same experience, and me too. It's just that when you start to meditate, you think breathing is like a real hard job. And Luang Por Chah said, I was looking after the water buffaloes as a kid all day long. I was breathing from all day, all night. It was never a problem then. How come just sitting still? It's suddenly a problem. And couldn't figure it out. But it's because we don't know how to pay attention in a relaxed way. As me, that's the tuaton, the I, me, mine element that takes over. So when it's me doing the breath, then we're kind of falling over our own feet, and we think, well, how do I do this? What comes after the bit where it goes out? Oh, I've forgotten. And so it's just as Phra Ajahn Jiew was saying, that over time you get more relaxed. So it's just feeling the body breathing, just like we don't beat our heart. The heart beats because there's no voluntary control. So over time, you can slowly learn to just feel the body breathing, and the active attention doesn't interfere or affect the breath at all. So the second one about goals, people misunderstand that desire has a bad rap in the Buddhist world, and people assume that because it's labeled right there, it's second noble truth, cause of suffering, tanha, desire is the cause of suffering. So then we, understandably, we assume that then every kind of desire is a troublemaker, it's problematic. But that's not the case, because essentially there's two kinds of desire. One is chanda, like I was saying to our friend here, that the beginning of that 10-stage process, chanda is interest. So that can also be translated as desire or zeal, enthusiasm. And so in the Buddha's teaching, he points out that quality of chanda, it's a necessary condition in order for enlightenment, or getting anything done. So there's a collection of 4 qualities called the 4 iddhipada, the 4 bases of success. So in terms of your working life, your business world, and or studying to get a degree or become a doctor or teacher or whatever, then you need to be interested to practice meditation, to train your mind, to develop your life skillfully. You need to be interested to do that. So chanda is the first element. The second one is virya, which means energy. So you need to be interested. You need to apply energy. It's because it's like sitting in a chair and thinking, yeah, meditation, that's a great idea. Like, no, you need to apply energy to fulfill that interest, that goal. And then the third one is citta, which is, in this sense, it means thinking things through. So contemplation. Okay, I want to learn how to meditate. I want to my business is to succeed. I want to get to the end of this degree course. What's the best way to do that? So those 3 all work together: chanda, virya, and citta. So you need to be interested. You need to apply energy, and you need to think about what it is you're doing. So whether you're building a business, you're practicing meditation, you're robbing a bank, cooking a meal, it applies in all those different areas. And so then the 4th one is vimamsa, which is not a very commonly used word. Vimamsa, it means looking back at the results, reviewing. Okay, having done that, having engaged in that way, okay, I was set about cooking that meal. How did it turn out? I've been running the business like this. How's the business doing? I've been in this degree course. How's it going? Have I completed my degree? Am I on the right track? So that's the feedback process as vimamsa. So that sort of stands alone, apart from the other 3. And the Buddha points out that we need to have those 4 qualities to succeed at anything. So when we talk about iddhi, often that people assume that just means psychic power, or siddhi in the Sanskrit. It also just means success, or succeeding at anything, any kind of worldly task. And so there's a very interesting dialogue between Ananda and a Brahmin in Kosambi. And the Brahmin asks Venerable Ananda, so what's the essence of the master's teaching? And Ananda says that it's necessary to let go of desire. If you can't let go of desire, then suffering won't come to an end. But if you can let go of desire, then suffering will come to an end. And then, but then this Brahmin called Unaba says, but you must want to end suffering. So that's a desire too. So isn't that a circular argument? How does that work? And then Ananda says, well, and then he describes the 4 iddhipada. He said, well, you had to want to come to the Gositarama, to Gosita's monastery, right? So yeah. And then, having wanted to come to the monastery to go Sitarama, then you got up and you started walking here, right? You thought about the pathway to get here, right? Yes. So you were interested. You expended energy. Then you made the journey to get here. Then, having arrived here at the Gositarama, what's happened to that desire? Well, it's my goal is fulfilled, so I got here. So that desire has faded away. That's not a problem. And none exactly. So it's a different kind of desire. So the chanda doesn't necessarily bring any kind of negative consequences. It's just setting a direction and then following it through with action. So tanha almost invariably has some kind of self-centered quality to it. It's agitated and has an element of self. So part of the practice that's very useful is to learn to distinguish between what's chanda, like wanting to follow the routine of the retreat. Very good. I'm impressed with how diligent everybody is. You're all on time, getting up early in the morning. Very good. So this is good. So that's a good kind of desire, the desire to use the retreat in a skillful way. That's a desire. But it's not based on greed or aversion, or it's based on wholesome qualities. So if we can learn to distinguish between chanda and tanha, between that interest or enthusiasm and craving, then that helps us a lot in our life. So we don't need to be afraid of that enthusiasm or putting energy into some particular project. If it's handled free of self-view and free of conceit, then we can work very hard, very diligently, with a lot of focus, and it doesn't produce any suffering. So living in the monastery where I am, as the abbot of a monastery, I have to look at this area a lot. I'm on more than 20 different committees. And we have a £10 million building project going on at the moment. So I have a lot of decision making to do, direction to set, choices to make. But if there's a lot of me in it, then it produces suffering. If there isn't a lot of me in it, then it's just it all flows along very easily. So I'm wondering if the people who are mostly Thai speakers, we've done this all in English today, people who are not so strong in English, able to follow along? Don't be shy. We can do the next one in Thai. Yeah. Okay. Yes, please.
กราบนมัสการพระอาจารย์ค่ะ I'm just a beginner. I have a question that when we do meditation, we should focus only on breathing in and out, or we should also pay attention to what's happening in our body, such as sweat is coming out on forehead or knee is being pain.
กับภาษาไทย
คือจริงๆในการภาวนาก็มีสิ่งที่เราสามารถจะกำหนดรู้ได้หลายอย่างนะเพราะว่าโดยหลักก็จะมีสติปัฏฐาน4อย่างใช่ไหมก็คือกายเวทนาความรู้สึกจิตคือคุณลักษณะที่เกิดขึ้นในจิตแล้วก็ธรรมคือข้อธรรมต่างๆหรือสิ่งต่างๆที่เป็นการพิจารณาแต่ว่าในเบื้องต้นสำหรับผู้ใหม่นะครูบาอาจารย์ก็มักจะใช้วิธีสอนให้ดูทีละอย่างนะให้เลือกอย่างใดอย่างหนึ่งนะก่อนนะว่าในขณะที่เรากำหนดดูลมหายใจแม้ว่ามันอาจจะมีความรู้สึกอย่างอื่นเกิดขึ้นก็ยังไม่ดูตอนนั้นนะเพื่อให้เรามีทักษะนะพอเรามีทักษะแล้วเราก็สามารถที่จะกำหนดดูสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นโดยธรรมชาติได้เพราะว่าสำหรับผู้ใหม่ความยากก็คือว่าพอมันมีความเจ็บปวดทางกายเกิดขึ้นมันก็ค่อนข้างยากที่เราจะเห็นว่ามันเป็นแค่อาการเกิดขึ้นทางกายมันก็อดไม่ได้ว่านี่คือเราปวดนะแล้วเราอยากหายปวด แล้วมันก็เกิดความยึดเข้าไปในอาการอันนั้นแล้วข้อแนะนำสำหรับผู้ปฏิบัติใหม่ๆนะที่ครูบาอาจารย์มักจะแนะนำก็คือว่ายังไม่ต้องดูเรื่องอาการที่เจ็บปวดอะไรมากมายนะเพราะว่าลำพังนั่งสมาธิเองก็ยังไม่ค่อยอยากจะนั่งแล้วใช่ไหมพอนั่งไปแล้วก็มีแต่ความเจ็บนี่ก็อาจจะไม่ค่อยนะไม่ส่งผลดีที่จะสร้างให้เกิดฉันทะที่ท่านอาจารย์อธิบายเมื่อกี้ในการที่จะทำลงมือทำเพราะฉันทะนี่จะเป็นตัวผลักดันที่สำคัญที่ทำให้เราปฏิบัติได้อย่างยั่งยืนนะก็เพราะฉะนั้นในช่วงแรกๆก็คิดว่าโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งในรีทรีตเนี่ยวัน2 วันแรกเนี่ยอาจจะยังไม่ต้องดูก็ได้ในความเห็นอาตมานะก็ฝึกที่จะมีสติอยู่กับลมหายใจหรือว่ากำหนดกรรมฐานเอาไว้ที่ไหนก็ใช้อันนั้นไปก่อนนะแล้วถ้าเกิดอาการทางกายอย่างเช่นถ้าเป็นความเจ็บปวดทางกายก็อนุญาตให้ค่อยๆขยับได้นะยังไม่ต้องทนที่จะดูกับมันนะไปแต่หลังจากเราฝึกไปสักระยะหนึ่งแล้วนะมีประสบการณ์ในการดูแล้วนะก็จะสามารถที่จะดูอันนี้ได้แต่ทั้งหมดเนี่ยหลักการก็คือพยายามให้ดูว่ามันเป็นสิ่งที่มันก็เกิดขึ้นตั้งอยู่ดับไปนะถึงแม้ว่าเราจะดูลมหายใจเนี่ยก็จริงใช่ไหมแต่สิ่งที่เราก็เห็นไปด้วยอัตโนมัติก็คือความคิดที่มันเกิดขึ้นนะความคิดความรู้สึกการปรุงแต่งในจิตนะคือเราต้องการใช้ไอ้ลมหายใจเนี่ยเป็นเครื่องมือเหมือนแว่นขยายที่ทำเห็นความคิดของเราชัดเจนขึ้นนะอันนี้ไม่ทราบโยมเป็นหรือเปล่านะผู้ปฏิบัติใหม่หลายท่านจะมาปฏิบัติแล้วเพิ่งจะเห็นว่าไม่เคยรู้เลยว่าตัวเองคิดเยอะขนาดนี้แต่ที่จริงมันไม่ใช่เพราะว่าเรามาคิดเยอะตอนเรานั่งสมาธิใช่ไหมนะเราก็คิดเยอะในชีวิตประจำวันนะเพียงแต่เราไม่มีโอกาสได้เห็นมันเท่านั้นเองนะเพราะการมานั่งสมาธิก็เป็นการฝึกให้เรามีเครื่องมือในการที่จะเห็นความเป็นจริงของจิตใจของเรามากขึ้น
Excuse me. John, I'm still interested in walking meditation because in my view, I believe that if I can be a little bit more skillful, this will help me to get the link back when I leave this retreat to the real world. So I can carry on, with life more mindfulness and more peaceful with the vibrant of, the world that I have to meet. So I would love to, I would appreciate more like techniques or guidelines to make it easier to master it. That is my question number one for I myself. And one of my responsibility is I need to share my experience with young kids, let's say age 9 to 13, at Dhamma Foundation. So like I would share what I have experienced with them and help them be able to at least meditate. So I would appreciate your help for me, I myself, and of course, the trick for that age who I think that they can have sort of like abstract thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I feel that life on a retreat is closer to the real world than life in the flow of society. So that I maybe call it the other world. The other world, because in Buddha Dhamma, the world, when the Buddha defines what he means by the world, he says that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is what is called the world in this teaching. And what is it whereby one is a perceiver of the world, lokasanyi, and a conceiver of the world, lokamani, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. So when we fully appreciate that the world is the world of our experience. That's the only world we can meaningfully talk about, the world as we experience it. Doesn't mean to say that there isn't a planet and stars and countries around and different people and languages, but the world we know is the world of our experience. That's all any of us have ever known throughout our entire lives, is what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. So that in a way is part of the development of walking meditation, is learning to recognize that it's not me walking through the world, me going back and forth, but rather the world is coming through me. That you are always here, right? Wherever you've been, every single one of us, our entire life, just regardless of geography, everywhere you've ever been, it was always exactly here, wasn't it? I don't need psychic powers to say that. That we are always exactly here, and then the perceptions of the world arise and pass away in our mind. And then the patterns that the world takes depends on where our body is situated, what our eyes are looking at, ears are hearing, but the world arises and passes away in our mind. So this is it's not just like a kind of a mind game, but it makes a huge difference if there's a change of view in that respect. Many years ago, I was a young monk in England, and I'd asked permission to walk to a new branch monastery up on the Scottish border. So it's about an 800-mile walk. So and I've been planning this for months. It was very exciting. I was in my mid-20s, and it was very keen to get on the road, get going, and discover the wandering life, the Tudong life. And in the morning I departed, Lumpur Sumedho made a very helpful comment. He said, actually, there's nobody going anywhere. There are just conditions of mind that are changing. So with walking meditation, as the body flows along and moves, to establish the heart in that quality of stillness that's absolutely here, that's present, and let the world flow through you. So again, if it's me trying to do that thing, then we'll trip over our own feet and fall into the garden. So you need a certain relaxation in that. But if we can develop that way of seeing, then it changes the way we relate to all kinds of action. That there's because it's not just with walking, it translates into every aspect of life, that there is the flow of perceptions that arise and pass in the mind, but the citta is always absolutely here. So there's a quality of stillness that forms an environment within which all the movements and the color and the activity of the world takes shape. So that Lumpur Cha referred to this as still flowing water, Nam Lai Ning. That there's the perceptions and thoughts, they flow, that's what they do. But that Ning, the Kwam Ning, is a stillness, the mind which knows that flow of perceptions never goes anywhere. It's absolutely present. It's kind of a here without a there, if you like. So that with walking meditation, just to notice that me trying to get to the end of the path, me turning around, just to notice that, to relax and just say, there's just feeling. There's the sensations of movement, the feet meeting the ground, sensations arising and passing away, coming and going, flowing through the mind. And where is the mind? Absolutely here. So we begin to find a quality of stillness within the movement and silence behind the sound. So in terms of imparting that to your students.
So it's just, if I'm right, it's mean that the body is moving, the leg is just, going up and down, and you could feel that it touches the floor, and it's not me there. Is that
right? So I can see I can see my hand is moving.
Yes,
but this which is knowing the hand isn't going anywhere. The hand moves, but that which knows the hand is not moving. Movement doesn't apply. Location doesn't apply. So how you convey that to your 9 to 13-year-olds?
I need to contemplate and think of techniques, but we learn a lot from Luang Pi about the observing, being an observer. That's just such a great trick.
And also the when we find that moment of letting the world arise and pass away within us, just notice the feeling of peacefulness that's present, because that's becoming, that we were talking about earlier. It's like me getting somewhere, even me getting to the end of my walking meditation path. And then, but that when there is that appreciation of the stillness of that awake, aware quality of the mind, there's a peacefulness, as an ease, a relaxation, and so there's it's not just a kind of a clever trick or a mind game, but it's a very skillful tool, a very useful tool.
And I have another situation that I'm not sure whether others have the similar environment, but I'm normally I really am in the environment that is only me who is interested in Dhamma and, the teaching and the history, everything. So for the past 5 years, I've put my time into reading and studying, taking tests. So, like when I go to Bodh Gaya or coming back home, it would just be, oh, you've been meditating. Why you still have lots of defilements? Now, why you still have, like feelings of anger? So, and the lots of time that I can control of myself, but there are lots of time that, it just, let go like that. So, my response is that, oh, I'm not Phra Arahant, so I still have lots of defilement. So I need lots of practice. So if you have any technique, just to help me hold on to think about this and shut your mouth, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that frequently comes up. It's like if you're working in an office and someone says to you, I want the corner office. You're a Buddhist. You're not supposed to have any attachments. So you move out and I'll get the one with the 2 windows. You're not supposed to have any attachments. And so that you can't control what other people think. And the way that people judge you, that's their business. I think one of the most helpful teachings of Luang Por Chah was 50 to 70% of the practice is knowing that you should let go and not being able to. You're heading out on a particular direction. You haven't arrived at the goal yet. So if people make those kind of judgments, then one way of responding is to say, well, if you'd really like me to be completely free of anger and fear and jealousy, then please just you can support me on next time I want to go on a retreat, or you can look after all my work while I'm away and feed the cat and look after the school, and thank you very much, and I'll be much easier to live with after that.